Hi there. So this week I would like to share with you the pattern and process of crocheting lovely little bees that could be turned into key rings, just be decorations, anything you like. I'd come up with the pattern for these just last year, I think, around Christmas time. I was crocheting lots of little octopus key rings that do really well at craft fairs, and I wanted to come up with some more designs for variation. I'd also made some snowman heads and yeah, these bees. I didn't write down the pattern when I started making them, I just kind of had it in my mind while I was making them around Christmas time, and so this week I've sat down, figured out what I did to make them just from pictures because they all sold out, so I only had a couple of pictures to reference, but I worked out how I'd made them. I've written it down, and that will be available as a pattern that you can download for yourself if you support me on my new Ko-fi page. I'll speak more about that at the end, but otherwise you can absolutely get your yarn, get your supplies and crochet along with me, and I'll just show you how it's done. Okay, enjoy. So let me get started. Now we would start with the materials we need. You'll need some scissors and a wool needle, something with quite a large eye, certainly wide enough for whichever yarn you choose to work with. You'll need a keyring top if you choose to make it into a keyring. I'm using some 12mm safety eyes which have a shank and a sort of plastic stopper for the back. Just pop them there. If you need to, you can use a stitch marker to keep track of each row as you're going. And put these all here. I'm using a 3mm crochet hook as well. Now the pattern starts with black for the face, so it starts from the front, and then for the body we work round and round to end at the back. But I don't think the black is going to pick up very well on camera, so I'm actually going to make a bee with a little grey face. Excuse the ugliness of this ball, I don't know what's happened to it. But yes, I'll start with the grey so that it can be picked up on camera a little easier, and then we'll be moving into yellow, alternating and finishing up with white. So make sure you've got these all on hand, and these are just cheap acrylic yarn, nothing particularly fancy, so just use what you've got. There'll be things that you can maybe get in supermarkets at the moment that are just very basic, and yeah, you can surely find something that'll work. Now then, I'll start with a loop which counts as your first chain on the hook, and then I do chain 2 more, and then going back into that first loop I pull through, and then we're gonna make 6 single crochets into this first loop. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6. I like to pull the tail a little bit and tighten it up, and then we're going to do 2 single crochets into each of the 6 that we've just created, and hopefully you can see that all right on the camera there. So we're going to do 1 and 2, and I just like to keep count rather than use a stitch marker at this stage. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 and 8, 9 and 10, and 11 and 12. And that takes us back to the start. And I like to slip stitch back into that first one, so that is there. Do a slip stitch to neaten it off, because we're going to be changing colours as we go. I would often, with a single coloured sort of sphere shape for toys, I'll just keep going around and around without stepping out with a slip stitch. But when you're changing colour, it's going to be better to do this so it doesn't make an ugly sort of jog in the colour. So we slip stitch and then chain one, and then we're going to do a single crochet and then 2 into the next stitch, and then we repeat that all the way around. So that was 1, and then 2 and 3 together, 4, and then 5 and 6 together, 7, then 8 and 9 together, 10, 11 and 12 together, 13 on its own, 14 and 15 together, 16 on its own, 17 and 18 together. Okay, and then we're going to do a slip stitch, and at this point we're actually going to change colour. So we have our first 6 stitches, then we doubled those to make a row of 12, and then we alternated single and 2 into 1 stitches to end up with our round of 18. So we've got 18 at the moment. Now at this point we're going to switch our yarn colour to yellow for our first stripe of the bee. So we've currently got our slip stitch on the hook, and what we're going to do is just pull through a loop of our new colour, hold on to that and pull your previous colour nice and tight, so you don't need to cut it off, and we've got a loop started of our new colour. So that counts as our chain 1, and then for our next round we're going to end up with 24, and we're going to do a single crochet, a single crochet, and then 2 single crochets into 1, and we'll repeat that 6 times. So I'll do 1, 2, 3 and 4 together, 5, 6, 7 and 8 together, 9, 10, 11 and 12 together, 13, 14, 15 and 16 together, 17, 18, 19 and 20 together, 21, 22, and 23, 24 together. Okay, and again we slip stitch and chain 1, and we just have a round now with just the yellow, and it's just a single crochet into every single crochet, so we still end up with our 24 stitches. So we'll just go all the way around. This could be the point where you put in a stitch marker, so I would just, I've done 1 stitch, I'll just make a little loop there so that you know when to stop when you come back. And here we are back at the start, I do my slip stitch, and we're going to change to black. So we've done 2 rounds of yellow, and well, not black but grey, which we're substituting. So you can see that nicely. We've got 2 rows of yellow, and now we're going to just carry back, just sort of take it in from the back there, and as before we give a tug on our previous colour so that first loop almost vanishes and keeps it nice and snug. And again, you don't need to snip the yellow because we'll be coming back to that. So that counts as our chain 1, and we're going to do 2 rounds now, all single stitches, just so we end up with a stripe all the way around. So this will start to flatten out and turn our shape into more of a cylinder. And there we go. Just slip stitch, chain 1, and another round of single stitches. And here we are back at the start. So I'll do a slip stitch, and I'm going to swap back to the yellow. So again, just like to swap which one is in the bowl. And I just pull it up from the back, loop it through, and that counts as our chain 1. So I'll pull the grey nice and tight, give it a tug, and that counts as our chain 1. And we're going to do another 2 with just the yellow, so that counts as our chain 1. Slip stitch, chain 1. And we'll do another round of single stitches with the yellow. So just all the way around, we should still have 24 stitches in our round. And here we are back to the start. Do my slip stitch. So just make a nice fairly invisible join for the stripes. And then I'm going to change back to the, what would be black, back to the grey again. A little tail in there. Away. Right, so pull this up behind and give a tug on the yellow. Now at this point, I'm just going to pull this little loop out a bit. Before we start decreasing stitches and closing up the back shape of the bee, I'm going to decide where the underside is, usually where the joins are. I make that the bottom half of the bee, and at this point we can put in our eyes. Now I like to make them fairly derpy and have them just right in the middle, somewhere just before the edge of the face outline. Oh, that's cute. Even lower than the halfway point. Looks super cute. So if you're happy with your placement, just turn it inside out, and then you put on your backing pieces nice and tight. That's 1 and 2. Just remember, there was one more thing that you need for making this, which I didn't mention at the start, which is stuffing. So make sure you have some toy stuffing as well, because you're going to need to fill it. Although if you don't have stuffing, you could use perhaps fabric scraps or anything like that. So there we are. Now turn your back round. So we still have our 2 yarns attached, and I'm going to come back to my loop here. I just like to pull it out quite loosely so I don't accidentally pull it through while I'm fitting the eyes. So here we are. Now then, for our last section of the black, we're going to do 1 round where we crochet 2 stitches together. So we do a decrease and then a single crochet, and we're going to repeat that 8 times so that we go from 24 stitches down to 16. Okay, so I'll put a little, oh no, I won't need to put a marker in here because I'll be able to see the change of color. So we're going to do, for a decrease, I like to do pull through a loop of the next stitch as well, so that we have 3 together, and then 1 loop through all 3, and that turns 2 stitches into 1. So that's our decrease, and then a regular stitch. So that's, repeat this 8 times, so that's together. So we have a decrease and a normal stitch. A decrease and a normal stitch, and then as before we do a slip stitch and a chain 1. So you can see it starts to pull in the sides of the bee. Excuse this yellow yarn getting in the way. Now then, our next round is again with some decreases. We do a single crochet and then crochet 2 together, a decrease, and then another single crochet. So single crochet, a decrease, and a single crochet, and we repeat that 4 times, and that will take us from 12 stitches in the round, from 16 stitches in the round to 12 stitches. So we do 1, then a decrease, and then a single crochet, and 1, and a decrease, and a single crochet. I've got some split yarn that's making it hard to get a nice little neat catch. That's better. Okay, here's my slip stitch, and then I'm actually going to swap to the white yarn for our very last color change. So I'm going to pull through with the white. Sure, I've got a little bit of a tail there, and give it a tug with the grey, which would be your black. Okay, at this point we're going to cut off our yellow and our grey. I'm just going to snip them both, and they are a little bit separately spaced in the back, but I never have had a problem yet with just tying them to each other, not too tight, but giving them a good couple of stitches. so that they are then tucked in and out of the way. Okay, so we have our, I can pop our tail of the white in there. So we've got our chain 1, which is with the white, and now for our last round we're actually going to stuff and then do 6 decreases with the white in order to close off the bottom, the back of the bee. So I'm just going to move these out of the way and I'll get some stuffing. So here I have some of the filling that I use, just polyester toy filling. And I don't find that I need tweezers or anything to get in here because it's just a simple oval shape, and I just take a little at a time and I start to stuff the body of the bee. Making sure I keep my yarn loop on the outside. It's very squishy. Just make sure that the eyes are sitting nicely because the shanks on the inside can be pushed around by the stuffing. So while you're able to access the inside, just make sure everything's sitting nicely. And that's quite nice. It's still a little bit squishy and it's not bursting out at the back. So we will pick up our loop again. And now we're just going to do 6 decreases. Number 6. Now at this point, I just cut the tail, leave enough for weaving in the end, and I will just put through that last loop. Okay, you can see your 6 stitches at the back there. And at this point, I take my wool needle and I like to, going in the direction that I was crocheting, so clockwise around, and I just pick up a loop from each of these stitches, and it just helps to close in that last round. Pull it not too tight, and if you really needed to, you could poke in a little bit more stuffing before you pull that tight, if you needed to just poke in a little extra at the end there. And what I do is just catch a loop, go back in to create a knot, pull that nice and tight, and I like to always lose the ends, is what it's called, I believe, where you just poke your needle in, take it out through the side, pull it tight and give it a little snip so that the end just vanishes into the body and you don't have any strays. So there we have the body of our bee. Very cute. I quite like the grey actually. Maybe it looks like a distinguished older bee, but it needs some wings. So now, using only the white, I'll make a loop, which counts as our first chain. I do 6 more, 1, 6, so we have a total of 7. And then I work 6 single crochets into the second chain from the hook. So you've got the loop that's on the hook, the loop that the yarn is going through, and then the next one is what we work into. So that is 1, and 6 to give us a nice turn. Then we do single crochets into the next 3 stitches. So it's a bit fiddly with the with a chain, but find your loops. We have 1 single crochet, 2 single crochets, and then 3. Then we're left with our last loop, the first chain that we started with, and we're going to do 6 more single crochets into there. So we've got 1, and 6, and then we just have 3 more single crochets. You could crochet the tail into it to help it to vanish, or you can sew in that end at the very end if you prefer. So that was 2, and then 3 single crochets, and I just do a slip stitch back into the start, just a slip stitch, and then a longish tail cut off, and I do again, just pull that through, give it a little tug, and that's essentially the wings that you have here. But what we're going to do is to weave in this starting tail, so I just use the yarn needle to go through the middle of the stitches, pull it through, give it a little tug, and snip that, pull, lose the end, and then what we're going to do is thread this longer tail. I like to just take a stitch, take us back to the middle, and all we're going to do is fold this in half pretty much. You can wrap your yarn around it to start with, so we end up with our 2 little wings here, and then stitch it onto the back of your bee. In fact, I'll wrap round and do a stitch just so it's nice and tight in place. Make sure I've got it in the middle. Yes. So I'm going to sew it just into that black middle stripe, I think. So I'm just going to do a little stitch like this, carry the yarn around the top, under and over, make sure it's nice and secure. And at this point, if you want to turn them into a keyring, something like this, or a smaller loop, whatever you choose, you can sew in with the yarn. I would actually ideally leave your tail a little bit longer if you're going to do this, but just loop and loop and loop around your keyring to keep it securely in place. Make sure it's got a lot of knots because you don't want it working loose. But for this little guy, I just want him to be decorative. I might actually put a little silver loop on him and turn him into a decoration. So again, I'm going to lose the end. Just going to pull it through, have it out the side of the body, and snip so the tail vanishes inside. And there we go. A couple of bees. So there we have it. I hope you have crocheted a bee or 2 with me, and if you would like to get the pattern for yourself, just follow the link in the description or search for me on Ko-fi. I've just recently set up a page and you can support me at any level if you like, and you will get in the thank you message a link to the pattern for you to download and follow by yourself. Otherwise, feel free to rewatch the video, get your materials out, and you can crochet another along with me. Thank you very much for watching. Thank you for subscribing and spending time with me. It's much appreciated, and I'll see you in the next one. Okay, thanks. Bye.